What's up, guys? Shadow here. Today, I'm going to be discussing one of the most disliked, kind of controversial, and meme to death entries in the Devil May Cry series. No, not that one. I'm talking about Devil May Cry 2.
Devil May Cry 2.
So, Devil May Cry 2. Let's talk about it. Devil May Cry 2 is a direct sequel to the most critically acclaimed game, Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry 2 was released at least 2 years after the initial first game. Devil May Cry 2, the poor fetus it is, has always been considered the lowest the franchise has ever been. But why exactly is that the case? To start off, let's dive into a little bit of some production history with the game. Hideki Kamiya, the director of the original Devil May Cry, originally had a major role in developing Resident Evil 2 and had a whole team of their own specific group over at Capcom. A little interesting fact about Devil May Cry's origin is that it initially was spun off of ideas for a Resident Evil sequel. Supposedly, it was supposed to be Resident Evil 4, which makes a little sense in certain areas. Strangely enough, Capcom decided that Devil May Cry deserved a sequel before the first Devil May Cry had even released. It was already greenlit for a sequel. That's pretty weird if you ask me. The team that was set to work for Devil May Cry 2 was incredibly inexperienced and consisted of a big chunk of the arcade developers from Capcom, who specialized in stuff like fighting games, Hadouken! The game was basically given a year and a half to be developed, and none of it looked good apparently, and that's when Capcom called in Hideaki Itsuno to salvage the game, with the last 6 months of development being given to Itsuno, who basically carried the team in the last bit of production. The game's entire aesthetic had been completely stripped from the Gothic castle theme of 1, and was leaning more towards a city environment, like New York. With all that in mind, it makes sense why this messy development is what caused the series to majorly pivot down so quickly, since there were so many ideas with so little time. Well, that's as basic of a rundown I can give. There are a lot of guys who can go way more in depth than me about that sort of thing. Now, let's get on with my breakdown of the game, starting with the story.
Devil May Cry 2.
Alright, so we all know the Legend of Sparta at this point, so no need for lore. The game starts in a museum. A lady is admiring an artifact called the Medallia. Then, Dante drops in a pretty spectacular way. This lady is Lucia. Dante gives the Medallia to Lucia, and Lucia throws a knife at a map. Why? Who the hell knows? Now keep up.
Now all boarding, flight Navy 4, Vita Marley.
Dismal.
So, Dante, after going through the airport, gets a wonderful welcome to this island known as Via de Marley. The journey is long and perilous, but Dante tries desperately to find the strength to keep moving forward with these terrible gameplay mechanics and map layout. He finally makes it to the end of town where Lucia's house presumably is. Meanwhile, Lucia is kind of on her way over to this house too. They meet up and stare into each other's souls, then the house explodes. Lucia's mother, Mathieu, comes out of a hole and tells Dante that she'll tell him a story about his father in return for helping Lucia kill Mr. Antagonist, otherwise known as Arius. Dante, on the other hand, suddenly really likes going for a Two-Face aesthetic and makes a wager. Heads he helps, tails he doesn't. Now Arius' goal is to summon and merge with the demon that Mathieu banished away many years ago, Alto Sax. Argus Sax. In order for Argisax to be summoned, he needs a bunch of demonic arcana to do so. Arius had already moved in his company, Ouroboros, onto Via de Marly. Dante ends up in some catacombs for some reason. These catacombs loop back around straight into town for some reason. After killing a monkey and squid, Dante finds a shotgun and a motorcycle. Dante drives into the city. After fighting a strange set of enemies, wolves, skeleton knights, monkey, demon-infested tanks, demon-infested choppers, Dante and Lucia chase a helicopter that held Arius and was heading towards an Ouroboros oil facility. Also, Lucia finds a couple of the arcanas that Arius is looking for. I'm not entirely sure what to make sense of all of that. What the hell? Okay, so back to chasing that chopper. Lucia makes it to the oil facility first and comes face to face with Arius, who tells Lucia that she is a demon who he made and proceeds to just leave. Dante also goes to the same oil facility, then meets Arius as well? I thought he just left. Oh, there he goes. Arius had summoned a demon before leaving, and Dante kills this demon that I assume was powering this oil facility because the building is ready to explode for some reason. Dante and Lucia escape the exploding facility, then both rush to some nearby ruins. Man, this is a crazy country, I tell you what. Lucia and Dante both go around the nearby ruins to collect the remaining arcanas before Arius gets to it. Lucia is the first to get to the arcana. She meets with Dante and requests that he hold onto it while she goes to Arius' HQ to take him on alone. As Lucia infiltrates Arius' base, it's not long before she's taken as a hostage. Huh. Now that I think about it, female side character that has some relation to Dante, an artificial demon created by the main villain, held hostage near the climax. After Dante was given the arcana, he happens to find Mathieu in these ruins as well for some reason. Mathieu gives the arcana that Lucia collected to Dante and pleads to him, requesting that he saves Lucia and stops Arius. But he's still in his two-faced face, so... Dante makes it to Arius' HQ in Hell, where he tries to trade the arcana for Lucia, then fights Arius himself. Dante saves Lucia from being killed, and then they jump out from the building. After hitting the ground and moving back to the start of the game, Lucia is a little mad about being saved and how Dante is gonna fix all this. Dante, after looking for some oddly placed orbs, finds and opens a portal to the Demon Hell building, kills Phantom again, and makes his way to Arius' little chamber where Arius is trying to make himself immortal. But as it turns out, Dante pulled the real medallion out of his ass. Arius is pissed, I think? They fight. Arius gets absolutely destroyed, and the most memorable cutscene in the entire game happens.
My dream! My life! I was going to be the king of this world! King? Yeah. Here's your crown.
After Dante defeats Arius, the world is saved! Lucia is conflicted with herself over her true heritage and asks Dante to kill her, in fear that she may at some point turn and kill humans. Dante obviously declines. BAM! For some reason, the Hell portal still opens. Immediately after the portal to Hell opens, and Argisax is there, ready to enter the mortal realm. Lucia requests that Dante does not go through that portal, knowing that he may not ever be able to escape Hell. Dante again, still in his two-faced face, and does yet another wager. As Dante goes through the portal, Lucia realizes that the coin he's been wagering with since the beginning is a coin with heads on both sides. Meanwhile, Dante in Hell faces off against Argisax, who is just an immobile blob that just is an amalgamation of the bosses he faced, including Phantom and Griffin from Devil May Cry 1. Then, Argisax, after being defeated, turns into Despair Embodied. That is the edgiest thing I've ever heard. Anyways, boom, jackpot. Dante kills Argisax and rides away on a motorcycle in the end and escapes Hell. The plot here was honestly kind of hard for me to follow in my playthrough of the game. I was kind of just going from stage to stage until a cutscene made more sense of what I was doing. As of writing this, I was barely able to help comprehend this without just going for the explanation of, this happened because, yeah, you know. Alright, that story breakdown is out of the way. Now let's get to my review, starting with the gameplay. For starters, combat has taken a nosedive from what the first game was like. Everything just feels worse now. Enemy AI is just non-existent and feels too easy, and there's no real challenge like in the first game. Combos do not exist, and it's annoying to try and get anything higher than D rank. The weapons that we are given for both Dante and Lucia just aren't that good either, nor were they worth switching around for. I mean, Rebellion is good enough, and like even switching to the long sword or the big sword just aren't worth it because like the damage isn't even that different. One is slower, one is longer. And then when it comes to the guns, you have the you have the normal basic shotgun, then you have this really slow RPG, and then you have ENI. But you don't need to switch to the other ones because like once again the damage isn't that different, and it's better just to use ENI. ENI just do a lot more consistent damage, especially when you upgrade them, and then you can just like pop Devil Trigger anyways. So like it really doesn't matter either way. Outside of Dante's base weapons, the ones you collect are just not worth swapping to or upgrading. The same applies to Lucia, but one of the weapons she collects is needed for her dumb underwater section. The way Dante and Lucia automatically lock onto enemies is just so annoying. I'll try to hit an orb to activate a door or something, and they'll immediately turn around the enemy's direction to uselessly swing at nothing. It happened way too often. The amulet system was garbo. Changing the nature affinity of my attacks did not make much of a difference in combat, and only being able to switch between going faster or flying was lame. None of the amulet stuff made a difference in gameplay, and it was only used for certain situations where I needed to fly up a vertical section or run past a closing door. Devil May Cry 2's missions feel super disjointed. There's no fluidity. Not only are the maps bad, but the navigation is absolute ass. The textures and weirdly modeled sections of the maps and doors that you can barely tell work as doors. Dude, it took me so long to escape the oil facility because of this dumb wall texture that actually turned out to be a door! Also, there's just too much space. What am I gonna do with all this space? It also looks like boring, open, barren too, because like there's like nobody in this city. The village is understandable, but like this is a huge city. How come I haven't seen any people? Or like, how come there's only like destroyed cars and fires? What happened here? I think that's all I really have to say about the map layouts. Enemy types and variety sucked. Both stories basically face their fair share of the same type of enemies over and over again. And like I was saying before, like with the wolves and the skeleton knights, a lot of these enemies just really weren't that inspired. You got me fighting flying goat demons, these weird fire wretches things, and then there's also the other enemy, the really basic enemies, the cage skeleton things. They were just never fun to fight. I mean, I've literally stood still and they could not hit me for the most part. And like their damage wasn't a lot. Whenever I died, it was just because it was literally out of sheer boredom. That's how bad it was. The bosses weren't that good either. All of them were just bullet sponges or smack fests. These fights just were a slog to go through, and it just felt like they'd go on forever. Devil Trigger got a massive downgrade in the regard that even throwing any kind of attack causes you to lose a chunk of your DT meter, while it is already depleting. I feel like I'm being a little too harsh here and only listing negatives, so I'll list off things here that I at least thought were cool. I like the mobility in this game. Well, sorta. Wall running was pretty sick, as well as Dante doing backflips, cartwheels, and somersaults. They also got rid of side rolling and made a button dedicated to dodging, which is more of a nitpick, but even then the dedicated dodge button doesn't usually work all too well. But if it wasn't for that implement, we wouldn't have gotten a certain gameplay mechanic that would revolutionize the gameplay in later sequels. I'll talk about that mechanic in the next video when it's relevant. The colors of certain stages actually look pretty nice and have sweet looking palettes. Sadly, the layouts and the way that the maps are segmented and put together make it really hard to navigate in some spots. And my least favorite place design-wise has to be the weird caves that lead to Arius' office and the hellified version of the village outside of Arius' base. The music feels like an evolved version of Devil May Cry 1's soundtrack, and emphasized more of the techno beats, leaving the ominous style that had a chokehold on the first game. I think the soundtrack is a highlight in some parts. I'd recommend giving it a listen. Alright, so let's see what I think of the game in general. I think the story is kind of nice. That's just me being generous. The story genuinely feels like Dante is just shoehorned into the plot that should be more about Lucia. But even Lucia feels like a waste of a character at this point in the timeline, at least. Dante is supposed to be at his most depressed, and it's nice to sort of get a peek of him being selfless through it all. Dante using the double-sided heads coin was just a way for him to confirm that he was just helping Lucia and Mathieu out of the goodness of his heart, but with the exterior looking like he's only helping by chance. That being said, it is a really weird change for his character, even if this is just a result of the dev team not knowing where to take the franchise. One other thing, his outfit is fucking clean. If this Devil May Cry 2 had it didn't have the best design of Dante, I'm not saying that, but this is fire. This was fire. They were cooking right here. Arius and Argosax are probably the worst Devil May Cry villains ever. Bland, generic. We know almost nothing about Argosax. We know almost nothing about Arius too. We only know his motives, and his motives are lame. He wants to become immortal and a king. There's no real antagonist in this game. It's just lame. I mean, sure, Mundus was one note, like a one-dimensional villain, but like, at least he had that evil energy about it, and it's just like, I need to take this guy down, you know? While with Argosax and Arius, it just feels like a chore, a really, really long chore. Just not very interesting, and there's still a few more stinkers that we'll have to come across soon. Devil May Cry 2 is just a really big mess of a game. I definitely don't see myself playing through it again, but it really had a lot of concepts that I liked. The execution just hit almost every wrong mark, but that's why I hope at some point down the line we get a remake of the original 2 games. Similar to how the Resident Evil games have been getting these last couple of years. Just imagine how much different these games would be if they fell more in line with the direction that 5, 4, or even 3 has. But I guess I'll specify all of that direction and stuff when I get into Devil May Cry 3 next time. My final verdict on Devil May Cry 2, I'd give it a... dismal. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. This game left a really sour taste in my mouth, but at least I'm going to have a lot of fun with the next game in line. Hope to see you all when it happens. Also, thanks to Kyo for helping with recording some background footage for Lucia and doing the thumbnail again. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!